Jenny Brown. Welcome to this week's MFB news. I hope you are very well indeed and warm. It is so cold out, isn't it? A few more weeks and I reckon we're into spring and it's going to feel a lot more comfortable. I was actually driving to work yesterday morning and for the first time in months the sun was just starting to come out as I approached the office, so that gave me great amounts of happiness and hope. Now, in terms of what we've got for you this week, we're going to do our usual lender update. There's been a lot of changes. There's been a real flurry of activity in the last week, all positive, I hasten to add. So some really good news there. And then we've got a surprise announcement in terms of what's been happening with house prices that I'm also going to share with you. Okay, so lots and lots of movement in the last week from the lenders. Downward pricing going on everywhere actually, which is really encouraging. What I would say is that we are speaking to people and people are still saying, nope, the rate's too expensive, I'm not paying that. And you know what, that's absolutely fine and understandable. They do feel very comparatively expensive to what people are used to paying. And I do get the kind of shock when you hear the kind of numbers that we're talking about these days compared to if you know, just coming off your 5-year fixed rate at 2.5%. So I think the question mark is actually, you know, while rates are definitely on a downward trajectory, which is really fantastic, how far are they going to go? So let's come back to that in a moment, but let's just update you on what's been happening. So first of all, Zephyr Home Loans have brought out a range of tracker products into their portfolio of rates. Now, the beauty of these products is there's no early repayment charges at any time. And we know that there are some clients who are faced with going onto a standard variable rate of sort of 7.5%, 8.5%, even nearly 10% with some lenders. So they're just looking for a temporary option to bring the interest rate down, but not tie them in because they're just really waiting to see what's happening with interest rate. The question we're getting asked the most at the moment, should I fix for 2 years or 5 years? Because people really do recognise that actually after 2 years, the expectation is very much that we'll be on a downward curve in terms of interest rates. So taking something to really just tide you over for 2 years is not a short period of time, but a relatively short period of time when we're talking about lifetimes of mortgages. Excuse me, it's something that people are really considering. So a tracker rate which has no early repayment charges is very, very appealing. Now, Zephyr's rates start from 6.2, so they're certainly not the cheapest on the market, but they are quite specific in terms of the kind of more quirky stuff they can do. So limited companies, HMOs, multi-unit freehold blocks above, flats above commercial new builds. And they're also offering a 10 basis point reduction on their rates for green properties as well. So actually, you know, while the headline rate isn't as competitive as some of the peer rates on these, still a really good option for some people. Now, we've also seen Bank of Ireland reduce their rates. They've made a reduction to their fixed pricing. Their rates now start from 4.93%. Bank of Ireland, very, very vanilla lender. Not looking for limited companies, HMOs, multi-units. They're looking for people really with a day job, as it were, with a small amount of exposure to the property market. So a very, very vanilla lender has brought their rates down there, which is great. We've also seen Lend Invest make some fairly chunky reductions. They're not our biggest reducer of the week, but they have made some reductions nonetheless that are quite large. 0.4% in fact across their buy-to-let range. So their pricing now starts from 5.99, and I guess that will tell you kind of where they were previously with their pricing. So these are one of the lenders that has kind of gone late rather than early in terms of their first big reduction post swap rates coming down again. So they're, so 75% loan to value, fixed rates from 5.99. They've relaunched into the holiday let space. They're quite good at this. They're a lender who will look at or assume the AST rental income when assessing affordability on holiday let rather than looking at the actual income the property would generate as a true holiday let. But still very, very competitive. And this works often for properties, you know, this calculation that they're using, but not all, particularly for those properties which are in really kind of strong holiday letting areas. So, for example, Cornwall and the Lake District. They've also gone into larger HMOs. So for them, this is HMOs of between 6 and 10 rooms. And they've also brought out some lower rates for properties with stronger EPCs, so essentially green products as well. So nice to see Lend Invest revisiting their offering and bringing their first kind of gambit, I would say, to the table after Christmas. We've seen Landbay make reductions across their 2-year product range of up to 30 basis points. This applies to their standard product range, small HMOs and multi-unit freehold blocks as well. It also includes their trading limited company range. So trading limited companies are a limited company which may hold buy-to-let properties but also does something else as well. So it could be that you are a property maintenance company and you draw income from doing repairs to other people's property. It could be that you're a dentist. It could be that actually your limited company that holds the property also owns shares in another company which is not an SPV. That would also take you out of SPV territory and into trading company territory as well. Lastly, they've just reduced their rental calculation down for basic rate taxpayers. This is for personally held properties now, down from 140% coverage to 125% coverage. That's quite standard actually. There's a large number of lenders who offer a more generous rental calculation if you're a basic rate taxpayer. Why do they do this? It's because essentially less of the rent that you receive needs to be set aside for tax because you pay less tax. Therefore, you can afford to allocate more of the rent that comes in towards a mortgage payment, and thus you can afford to borrow more. Now, we've also seen fleet mortgages make reductions on their fixed rates. So 20 basis points reductions, their fixed rates are now starting from 5.15%. Fleet are a specialist lender, so they're really, really great at limited company transactions and people with large portfolios, HMOs, multi-units. You know the drill on these. We've seen Molo make reductions of up to 1% on their rates, so their fixed rate pricing is now from 5.49. Molo are a lender who are relatively new to the market. I think they're still really finding their feet in terms of their lending policy, and by that what I don't mean is they don't have a lending policy and they're sort of trying to shape it. What I mean is that they came to the market with a lending policy and now they're kind of going through the iterations of improvement on that policy. So they're really broadening things on a fairly frequent basis. They're good for individual lending and limited companies. They've got some really nice USPs as well. For example, they'll lend on investor-led properties rather than sort of needing to be resellable generally across the whole market. So good to see these guys making some reductions there. We've also seen, I told you there was quite a list this week, BM Solutions make, and these guys do win the prize for largest rate reductions. On their 2-year rates, reductions of up to 1.62%, and on 5-year rates of up to 0.1%. So really, really competitive rates there from BM Solutions as well. BM are sort of like a very long-standing lender. For those of you who have been in the market for a while, you'd have come across them in your travels, I'm sure. Individual lending only, not looking for large portfolios in the background, but there is no minimum income requirement. They're good at properties, for example, things above commercial, ex-local authority, high-rise. Essentially with BM Solutions, they have quite a unique approach. They don't have an acceptable list as such of properties. It's always down to valuer's comments. So if the valuer says, yeah, you know, this is, you know, good resale and actually will let very easily, then BM Solutions are highly likely to lend on it. So really encouraging to see such a large key player in the market actually make some really chunky reductions. Now, we've finally, in the lender changes this week, seen a couple of lenders make amendments to their rental calculations. And this is really important because this is where I think we're seeing a lot of challenge. So not just the interest rates themselves. It's one thing if you can, you know, find a rate that you're quite comfortable with. But the other thing is the rental calculations. So there's two which I really wanted to share with you which have come into place. The first one is the Mortgage Works. Now, the Mortgage Works are the largest buy-to-let lender in the UK. So when these guys make a change to anything, other lenders are paying attention. And what they've done is they've reduced the rental calculation they're using on their tracker rates by 1%. So rather than it being 145% coverage at 6.49 or 7.49, it's now come down by 1%. So that's really, really encouraging. And like I say, other lenders in the market are now going to be looking at their rental calculation and just double checking, have we gone too far on this? Actually, is this in the right place? You know, do we need to make a further amendment? So really, really encouraging there. And the other thing that we've seen is Virgin Money, who have made a reduction on the rental calculation they're doing if it's a like-for-like remortgage. So like-for-like remortgage is if you currently have a mortgage for £150,000 and you're remortgaging to Virgin and only borrowing £150,000, that's a like-for-like remortgage. So you're not changing the loan amount in any way, shape or form. So what they're doing is now saying that the rental calculation they're going to use is 125% coverage at either 5% or the interest rate plus 1%, whichever is highest. The reality is it's probably going to be the latter at the moment. So this would be 125% at 5.4% would be their rental calculation for anyone doing a like-for-like remortgage in personal names, irrespective of tax code, irrespective of anything else. That's really good as well. And I think we're going to see more lenders. I know there's lots of conversations going on with the lenders. They're kind of really caught between a rock and a hard place at the moment. So they understand the rental calculations are proving challenging for people. They want to be able to do more and help more people. But actually the rental calculations are a regulatory thing. These are the guidance that has come down from the regulators. So there's only so far these guys can really change things before they get into the territory of kind of breaching the requirements of them as being a responsible lender. So more on that to follow. So rounding up on all of this, where are we? So swap rates, I like to share these with you every single week. These have edged down again, so we're now at 3.565. Comparatively, 1 month ago, 5-year swaps were at 3.913. So things have come down. They were just under 3.7 just before Christmas, bounced up over 3.7 during Christmas, and now we're down at 3.565. So things are certainly going in the right direction. And I think what's really important here is what this doesn't just tell you is that interest rates are, going in the right way, but also what this really can tell you is a bit more about the forecast for the kind of economy as a whole. If the swap rates come down, that means that inflation is expected to also come down, and that can only be a good thing for all of us. Rounding up on interest rates and where we are more broadly, so if you are looking to borrow in your own name on a straightforward standard property, variable rates are currently from 3.59, 2-year fixes from 4.23, and 5-year fixes. Right, this is a complicated one. So the lowest 5-year fixed rate in personal borrowing, and actually also limited company borrowing as well, is from 4.39, but this comes with an arrangement fee of 7% of the loan amount. Now, whilst I understand a lender would bring a rate like this to the table, lower interest rate equals better rental calculation and also lower or improved cash flow for landlords. With a 7% arrangement fee, I'd struggle to take this rate seriously, if I'm brutally honest with you. So to my mind, while I want to be honest with you about where the fixed rates are starting from, so the short answer there is 4.39. Actually, I think let's be more realistic about where they're starting from with a sort of proper product. 5-year fixes, personal borrowing from 4.63%. Moving on to the limited company equivalent, so variable rates are starting from 3.99, 2-year fixes from 4.89, and again, if we disregard that crazy 4.39 type pricing with the huge fees, your 5-year fixed rates are really starting from 4.99. Now, as well as the UK economy growing rather than shrinking last month, there's been another bit of surprise news which has been released with regards to house prices, and this has come from the Rightmove house price index. So what they're saying is that the average new seller asking prices rose by 0.9% to £362,438 in January, which amounts to an increase of 3,301 in asking prices, which is the biggest rise at this time of year since 2020. Now, I think it's just important to note here that what we're talking about is asking prices rather than sold for prices. So what's really confusing when we talk about house prices is that these two metrics are referred to largely interchangeably. Now, asking price, you can ask what you want for a property, but you're not going to necessarily sell it for that amount. The value of a property, as we all know, is what anyone is prepared to pay for it, what not someone feels they want to ask for it. But still, it's encouraging to show that actually sellers are feeling slightly more ebullient about the market and actually increasing prices across the board as an average. Now, this is sort of underpinned, I guess, by some further data that was shared, which says that the number of prospective buyers contacting agents is also up 4% compared to the same period in 2019. Now, the reason we always reference 2019, this is just the most recent sort of time before COVID. I think to compare anything to COVID times is probably sort of inappropriate, to be honest. So that's why we're referencing 2019. But it's also up by 55% compared to the 2 weeks before Christmas, which is the biggest New Year bounce since 2016. After the extended lull at the end of the year. So this is really positive. So essentially what we're saying is actually normally things go really quiet at Christmas and then there's a kind of bounce back in January, and this bounce back is the largest recorded since 2016. So it shows that more buyers are now coming back to the market. Now, what they've also said is that so Rightmove is saying that the average asking prices are still 8,720 lower than their peak in October. So actually we are still down on where we were in October, but we're up compared to where we were in the previous month. The number of inquiries is also down by a third compared to the buoyant market of this time last year. So I don't think it's, under any, we're not under any false illusions that the market has kind of recovered, but actually what we have seen is a dip and then a kind of upward turn, which is really, really encouraging. Now, what Rightmove have gone on to say is that the seasonal increase in new seller asking prices this January from December is particularly encouraging for movers who are looking for the reassurance of familiar trends and a calmer, more measured market after the rapidly changing and at times chaotic economic climate in the final few months of last year. They go on to say that these statistics, based on the largest sample of any UK housing report, give reasons for some positivity at the beginning of 2023. The numbers certainly suggest that activity has bounced back after Christmas, and agents will now be busy trying to match the likely revised expectation of buyers and sellers as we move towards the important spring season. Lastly, they do kind of caveat this with, we expect the full effect of affordability constraints and last year's mortgage rate rises that will hold back some segments of the market in the first half of the year, but their leading market indicators may start to identify some green shoots of growth that will go on to strengthen in the second half of 2023. So that does sound rather encouraging. Well, encouraging for people who want house prices to go up, not so encouraging for those people who are waiting for them to fall off a cliff so they can go out and start collecting some bargains. But I think really just watch this space. But I think in terms of the sense that I'm getting where things are, so commodity prices are down year on year, swap rates are coming down, the asking for house prices are really kind of not going back up. 1 month doesn't obviously constitute a recovery, but have gone in the right direction at least. So there is some real kind of positive vibes around in terms of where the market is going. How nice not to be a doom and gloom merchant for a change. That's everything for us this week. Thank you, as always, for joining me. I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, really, really, we would love to speak to you. 0345 345 6788. Do look after yourselves. Keep warm. I'm going to be sitting in my home office today, wrapped in blankets, I think. It is freezing in here. I hope your homes are much warmer than mine. And I will catch you again, same time next week.